Welcome to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur podcast. I am your host, Kayleigh Greenacre, a business strategist, coach, TEDx speaker, author, and your go-to woman for all things business strategy. I am obsessed with supporting female entrepreneurs to grow unstoppable six and multi-six-figure businesses that they love, giving them the freedom and life that they desire. During this podcast, I'll be sharing with you everything that you need to become a successful female entrepreneur, from the mindset shifts to sales and marketing strategies, and how to become an iconic leader that people can't get enough of. It is my mission to help you stand out, attract your dream clients and customers, and sell out of your offers with ease whilst building the business and life of your dreams. Let's make this your reality, ladies. Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of Actually I Can, the Female Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Kayleigh Greenacre, and I am joined today by the fabulous Johanne O'Halleron, who is a coaching business strategist. And today we are going to be discussing how to unlock your business growth through collaborating with industry experts. Johanne, it's so nice to have you here. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on. I always love our chats.
I do as well. We always dive into all of the things. Ladies, you are in for an absolute treat for this episode. And I'm really excited to dive into this topic because this is your zone of genius. Like, I know you for this particular topic. But before we dive into the topic itself, could you just give us a little bit of an introduction as to who you are specifically and more so a little bit more about your journey as a female entrepreneur?
Yeah, of course. So, as you can hear from my accent, I always start with this. I'm Irish because people are like, is it real? Yes, it is. So I'm a mum and I'm also a grandmother and I love it. I'm a young grandmother. I've got two gorgeous grandsons. And I will say I'm very grateful that I have the business I do, that I can spend so much time with them. I think as women in business, right, we always want to get to a stage where we have that time freedom, and it's nice when you can actually see it happening. But I've had my business since 2020. And how it actually came to be is I had been in quite an unhealthy relationship and I kind of got really lost. That relationship was the best thing and the worst thing to ever happen to me. So I had this is a bit of a trigger warning. I had two miscarriages, and the second one completely floored me because it really gave me an eye-opening insight into the type of relationship I was in and just how toxic it was. But it also gave me an eye-opener to what am I doing with my life? Like, I'm on the cusp of being 40, and when I look around, I'm like, this is not the life that I had in my head that I was going to live. I'm now getting to the stage where I'm 40. Am I going to continue to allow this to go on? So I actually went on a little bit of a healing journey, like to grieve and, to really figure out what was going on with me. And actually was through that journey between going for counseling, going for energy healing, and finding my first ever coach that I came to the realization, do you know what I really want to do? I really want to support women to figure out what they want to do with their lives, because I don't want any other woman to feel that way. And also, given the fact that Leah at that stage was, coming into being an adult, I was like, I can't have her seeing that this is the only way that we can operate as women, because I'd come from a single parent home. She had come from a single parent home. I was like, we've got to shift this. Like, we've got to break the generational pieces that have continued to create, like the buck stops here. So that's how it started in 2020. And how I ended up becoming a business strategist was every woman that came to me to figure out what they wanted to do in life wanted to set up their own business. And just purely from a place of generosity, I was just like, well, this actually works for me. Do you want to give it a go? This is what I'm doing. Do you want to give it a go? And they all started to see results. And I was like, do you know what? I'm actually really enjoying telling them those things. Let me just test it out and see if I put together a class for people, will something actually come of it? And lo and behold, it did. And I was like, I actually love this. I'm having so much fun doing this. Like, I really, really love it. I know, like, you were your teacher background. I actually love teaching and training. And before I had my business, I worked in human resources. And that was kind of a huge focus for me, was that whole learning and development piece. So they got to marry together really, really nicely. And it's been the best thing I've ever done. I'm having the most fun in my business.
Oh, I love this. And I love that, you're so passionate about what you do. I know you absolutely change people's lives with the clients that you work with. And I think it just makes it so much better as well when it's something you're so passionate about and you love helping and supporting people, and you have a skill. Like you said, your nature is so nurturing, but also you're so informative and educational from the way that you teach. So I absolutely love all of this, and I can really see and hear your passion. I know you really well anyway, so that's great.
Do you know what I think it is as well, Kayleigh? I think it's like, when you start your business and, well, okay, I'll speak for me. When I started my business, my first 8 months were not easy. Like I was not that overnight success. I was, what am I doing wrong? What am I missing? What's not going right? And like for the first 8 months of my business, I made a total of €2,000. And as a single parent, nobody can live off that. Like there's not one person that can. So I think having had that as a real struggle and really knowing what works to get you over your first client, your fifth client, your 10th client, then finally that six figures, I think makes all the difference. Like, when you can meet somebody where they're at. So I'm grateful that I actually had a struggle at the start.
Yeah. And I think, when you say overnight success, I mean, I don't know any overnight successes. I think there's so many, speculations and all sorts in the online space, but ultimately, all of us have been and still are on our own journeys. And, all of us put a lot of work and effort and energy into building the businesses that we have. And I know that there's so many of my listeners that we listen to this podcast resonating with exactly what you're saying and what we're talking about right now, in the sense of it's not easy. There's so many things that you need to kind of implement, etc. But I'm really excited to talk about the topic that we're here to talk about, because I feel like this is going to really support people. And if you haven't yet explored collaborations, listeners, then please do listen to what Johanne's got to say, because this is really going to help you. So let's just talk about collaborating in general, in terms of, working with industry experts, etc. What are the key benefits in your eyes? Talk to us a little bit about the perks.
I will say single-handedly, if you're looking for an organic strategy to actually build a solid group of people that fit into that ideal client bracket, there's no better way to go, because the power, the reach, the visibility, the ability to create like cash injections and ongoing sales from it. I've never found another, I'm going to call it a funnel, that works as well as these do. But I'm like, even if you take it from a personal level, we met because of collaborations. Do you know what I mean? Like it's the network that it gives you. It's the community feel that it gives you. And like, to be fair, it can be pretty lonely in business. Like if I was to turn around to Robert, my partner now, he hasn't got a clue what I'm talking about. You need the people around you that are not necessarily in the same journey as you, but that are in different pockets that you can just like touch base with, go from a curiosity point of view, like, is this working for you? What do you think about this? But also, I think it helps with building the confidence in the skills to be able to deliver and fulfill your promises to your clients too, because you've got other people that are supporting you and giving you that stamp of approval to say, well, I trust her, therefore somebody else can too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree with that, with the first point that you said as well, in terms of, it can be such a lonely space. And you can meet some incredible people through collaborations. And I know that we're going to dive into, how to go about this today, but I have met yourself. I've met, so many. In fact, every single guest that my listeners will hear that come onto my podcast, I have done collaborations with. And it's just such a powerful way of, yes, being able to connect with people, to make friends, which absolutely is great. But then also what you touched on there is quite simply showing up and sharing with people your zone of genius, your expertise, what you've got to give, which is really, really exciting. So if, for a number of our listeners, quite a few of our listeners on this podcast will, they will be in some part of their journey as an entrepreneur. Some will be in their first year of business. And if we just kind of focus on our listeners that are within their first year to start with, what advice would you give them about, going about collaborations? Because I feel like sometimes it's quite a daunting thing to reach out and ask people. And what advice would you give them?
Yeah. And I get that, because I know I've been there too. It's like you see somebody much further along than you and you're like, well, what do I have to offer? Why would they ever do anything with me? And we've all felt that too. But for somebody who's starting this now, what I'd say is fully commit to it, because you will reap the rewards if you fully commit to this and not just have it as in, I'll give it a try and see if it works. No, like fully commit to this, because this is the exact thing that changed my business at that 8-month mark. So the first thing I'd say to you is like, think about the theme that you want to have for your event. Like how do you want people to feel? What do you want their experience to be? How do you want them to consume information? Because what I see, like say, if I look at something that people do quite wrong, is they will look at people that, number one, that they like, but necessarily don't have a big audience, but they'll also try and create it in a way that's easy for them as the creator versus the person that's consuming it. So like if you take you and I, right, we're busy entrepreneurs, we're moms, I'm a grandmother. Time is precious for us. So if something's going to be time heavy for us to consume, are we going to do it? Nope. Whereas, if we were getting things in little bite-sized chunks, then that's more excitable. If we know it's going to be focused on the result that we want, that's going to be excitable. So they're the key things that I would think of first before you even think about reaching out to experts. Because if you're not like fully enrolled in it and you're not fully grounded in why you're doing what you're doing, it's going to be harder to get those bigger people to say yes, because they're going to say yes to the vision that you have for this, not for what you're going to get from it. And I think it's really important to get grounded in that, because we're very heart-centered as women anyway, we really are. And then what I would do is, honestly, I would make a list of all the people that you're like, do you know what? It would be so amazing if I could have them on. I would be so grateful. I'd be ecstatic. I'd be jumping up and down. Couldn't even believe that I could have them. And literally pick up your phone and start sending DMs. There is nothing nicer than getting a personal message. Like I get bombarded with emails all the time. I'm sure you do too. I don't actually do business by email. Full transparency, I don't. I do business by voice. So DMs are going to get responded to significantly quicker than your email too. So get courage and reach out to people by voicemail and just say to them, look, I absolutely adore you. Here's why I adore you. I actually have an event coming up and I'd really love if we could have a quick 10-15 minute chat about it to see if it's something that you feel aligned with, and then take it from there. Don't make it more complicated, because I'm sure Kayleigh, you might say the same thing. Like, it's actually such a privilege when somebody comes to you and is like, I'm doing this event, would you like to be on it? Like, that's lovely to be on the receiving end of that.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And even from, I know we've sort of touched on events and we'll dive deeper into that in a minute, but also even just thinking about a podcast, for example. So as we know, we're on my podcast right now, and I get daily emails, people reaching out, wanting to be on my podcast, etc. People I don't know, people I've never connected with before. But you know what? They're going for it. They're giving it a go. They're wanting to connect with me. And then people who DM me and ask me about my podcast, great. I love a conversation. I'm exactly like you. And I love to have voice notes. I'm absolutely one of those voice note people that will leave 20-minute voice notes. And then you have to listen to it on the return. But I think you're absolutely right. And there's, I love what you said there in terms of just absolutely reach out and give it a go. Like, there is no one that wouldn't find that as a compliment, surely, that that you're inviting them on potentially to be a guest on your event or your podcast or whatever it is that that our listeners are considering maybe running in the future. But it's such a great opportunity, and it really is. And you never know unless you ask. I remember being told this actually in the first year of my business when I was looking at collaborations. And it was actually for me to go on to podcasts. So it's a slightly different concept of it. But my coach at the time said, if you don't ask, you'll never know. And I reached out to some of the biggest coaches in the industry, and I was shocked with, they would be like, yeah, okay, so what do you want to talk about? Like, what do you want to come on and talk about on the podcast? And if I hadn't have asked, I wouldn't have got on those podcast episodes. So it really does go to show that absolutely those conversations are key, and it's building conversations and actually, like you said, having a relationship or building relationships, that I say, with the person on the other end, because they are all human. Everyone is a human being. We're here to connect, we're here to support and help, and I think that's that's a big part of it, isn't it?
For sure. And like, I think it does, I really firmly believe it helps build your confidence too, because like I'll give you one question that I always get clients to ask whenever they're connecting with somebody is, whether somebody's a yes or no to your event, ask them, do they have anyone that they can then connect you with to keep building up that network? Because you'd be really surprised at not only the connections that you make, but the quality of connections that happen. So I don't know if your listeners are going to know who Elena Cardone is, Kathleen Cameron, but I was on a collaborative event with them 2 months ago. Now, if you had to ask me when I was starting my business, did I think something like that would be possible? The answer is no. They came to me. The event organizer came to me. So, you just don't know what's possible for you if you don't have the courage to even start to say yes. Yeah. So just imagine where you'd be in like a year's time by collaborating with somebody now and then asking, who else can you connect me with?
I love that. What a brilliant way of looking at it as well. Absolutely. So if people are approaching others, say, for example, in their industry or outside of their industry, but, to collaborate with, is there, what factors should they consider when choosing the right people? Because I think this is a thing as well, because you could go to people but potentially they're not right for your event or your,
Yeah.
your collaboration opportunities. So what kind of factors do you think that they should consider when choosing the right industry expert?
That's a great question. I'll give you key things that I would always look for. The first thing is you want to make sure that they're supporting your ideal client. So they don't need to do what you do, but they need to support your ideal client. Otherwise, it makes no sense, because the people aren't going to resonate with it. Or even if they do, at the end of the day, they're not going to come and buy from you, which defeats the purpose for everybody involved, because it's not just you who's going to get leads from this, it's the other people that you're collaborating with too. So you want to make sure it serves everybody. The next thing then is, as much as people may have a really big social media following, social media doesn't convert at the same rate email does.
Yeah.
And I don't care what any social media guru says out there, they're all selling through email. So it's really important that while, yes, they may have a big social media following, do they have an email list, and are they willing to promote it to them? Because that is going to serve everybody significantly more. Social media reach is great, but the volume of times that you need to be connected with the particular event on social media to have it convert at the rate that you want it to is much more than you're ever going to ask of somebody that you're collaborating with, because they get to run their business too, right? So it needs to be supportive for everybody that's on it, which is why email is really important. But the other thing I would look at too is, have they been on events before? Because granted, there's some people that just won't do them, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has a choice as to how they choose to run their business. But if you look and see that people have been on them before, it means they're probably pretty PR friendly. They're pretty open to collaborations, and they come from a place of generosity, which I think is always really important, because it is a give. A collaboration is a give. So they'd be the core things that I would look for when reaching out to people. And to be fair, just because somebody has, like, say, for example, if they have a small social media following, doesn't mean that they have a small email list. So just go with those three things and have the conversations.
Absolutely. And you know, I completely agree with that as well in terms of social media. I don't want to say social media isn't everything, but it isn't.
Yeah.
And as is a large following, it doesn't necessarily mean they have 10,000 engaged people that are potentially going to attend your collaboration event, etc. Does it? So absolutely, I think that's great advice and something to really kind of think about. So on the opposite to that then, in terms of mistakes, are there any common mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making when trying to collaborate with industry experts?
Yeah, there is. And it's always the same ones. If I look at any clients that come to me about this, it's the key ones that will come out. They're putting social media before email. That is a huge one. They're also keeping the circle really small. So as in, like, people that they just know and that they feel would add great value, but there's no depth to exposure, which is important, because, the way I look at these is, it's not just about us. So it's not just about you and how you feel about this. It's to create an impact for other people. And you're not going to get the reach and the impact that you want if you're going to play small. So go beyond your inner circle, go beyond the people that you know, add in the courage piece. But they're the two key things that people go wrong. And if I could add in a third one, just as a little insight, is not adding in a cash injection. This is your perfect opportunity to create a funnel. And I know people hate that word, but you're bringing in a pretty big audience into you. It's only natural to create an upsell from there, but people are afraid to do that, because it's like, oh, well, I can't do that when experts are giving me stuff for free. And it's like, well, you actually can, because if somebody buys that, they're a much warmer lead, which means their likelihood of investing in you and the experts that you're going to have on is significantly higher, because they're actively looking for it. So yeah, I would see people making that mistake too, is not adding in that, like, little cash injection upsell piece as part of it.
Amazing. So looking at the bigger picture, looking at how to warm that audience, a little bit of a cash injection, but also to support you with retaining them, really, or nurturing them, should I say, in order to convert them in the future. I love this. So something that I think a lot of people struggle with in the online space is a fear of it being too saturated, of potentially them not being able to stand out. So when it comes to collaborations, how would you say that it supports people with that kind of differentiation and standing out in the online space?
Well, like, I think the first thing is, it positions you as an expert anyway, because you're the one, if you're running this event, you're the one delivering it, which means that you're holding that entire space, and you've brought all these amazing people together to be able to support. Like, if you think about the value that's in them, it's incredible. Whether it's a 1 day, whether it's done over 3 days, 5 days, 30 days, I've seen 90 days, like the value that's in there is always incredible. And I'm like, when you ground yourself in that and realize how much impact is actually being made and the value that's being provided, it can't not have you stand out. People are always looking to consume information. You being the authority in this area and saying, if you want this result, here is everything that you need. Here's a full jigsaw puzzle to create that. People want that. The one thing I'll say is, you definitely don't want to focus on the problem when you're doing like any sort of collaborative events. You don't want to focus on solving a problem for somebody. You want to be able to focus on providing a solution for them, because that's when you can tend to bring in the freebie seekers versus people that are actively motivated to change their current situation.
And on that note, freebie seekers, we know there are freebie seekers out there. Yeah. And again, I think that might be a fear or a worry for some people potentially considering putting on a collaborative event. Is there any advice that you could give around that in terms of how to try to really target the ideal client to come into that collaboration space?
This comes back to what I was saying earlier, is like being clear on the theme and the experience that you want people to have and how they're going to consume it. Like, because if you know that and you know what your customer, your clients like, then that makes it so much easier. And then having good quality speakers like that have a genuine connection with their audience is going to make all the difference. Because again, you can see people that have these massive followings, but their presence is quite cold. It's not interactive. It's not engaged. You don't see them sharing personal stuff or, different things like that. So that makes all the difference when it comes to something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of your own experience, because I know you've done a number of collaboration events and they've been so successful, how often would you say, or would you advise people to do these? Because I mean, I know I do one a year, I do a summit every year, but everyone's different. What would your advice be on this in terms of?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it depends on the type of business that you want to build and your capability right now, or your bandwidth for the speed that you can go at. That's the first thing that I think makes all the difference. Ideally, you want to be on/create one at least every quarter, because they are essentially audience builds. So you want to always have that, flow of leads coming in. And when you do your first one, your funnel's already set up. So you're just going to be pulling people through the same one again. But I would definitely say no less than 2 a year for sure. Ideally 4. And when you get into the swing of them, they become significantly easier. But, you definitely want to make sure, I always call it a layered strategy. You want to make sure for every one that you create, you're on at least 2 more, so that the visibility maintains and you maintain it throughout the 12 months, so that all the effort and the pressure and, the showing up isn't on you. You can give yourself a little bit of a breather.
Absolutely. And would you advise to our listeners to kind of tie one of these into a launch? How does it fit with launching? So I know this is something that, again, a lot of our listeners will either be implementing into their businesses or maybe considering. Would you tie it into a launch?
Yeah. So the way that I get everybody to do it is we do it very, very strategically. So it kind of covers like a 6-month span, for want of a better word. So you'll set up your collaborative event, you'll have your funnel coming in, they'll go into a cash injection, and whether they buy it, they buy it. If they don't, they don't. But we strategically place that cash injection and the upsell to have multiple personal touch points with you, so that your opportunity to convert is much higher. But then on the back end of that, then we'd carry out some market research, and with that market research, go directly into a sales pitch to them through like either a launch or, just direct selling, depending on what type of the business is. But when you have it strategically done out like that, and you've got so many touch points with people, no matter what stage of the customer journey people are at, you have more opportunity to convert them, which is why I love them.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love all of this. I absolutely love this. And to all of you that are listening as well, if you've never tried to put on a collaborative event, or if you've not done collaborations, then absolutely contact Johanne, because she is going to support you and help you with this side of business. And it is absolutely game changing, especially if you're wanting to build your lists, to nurture your audience, and to convert into sales. Absolutely. So I've got a couple of questions just to kind of finish off, Johanne, because I ask everyone these questions. The first one is, what is your word or mantra of this year?
Actually, I talked about this the other day. Expansion.
Oh,
expansion.
like it.
Yeah, this is the year of expansion, personally and professionally. Our family has expanded. Home here is going to be expanded. Business is expanding. Expansion.
I love this. I always love listening to people's one words. Absolutely. And just to kind of finish off the episode, what would be your one final piece of advice to our female entrepreneur listeners?
I would say start with courage. Start with courage for everything, whether it's, you choose to do collaborations or you choose to do something else. Make sure that you're always driven by courage, because confidence is always a skill that's going to be learned and you will feel it after you've mastered that skill. So come at things from a point of view of courage, and definitely try collaborative events. They changed my business in 2021. That's when my business took off. They are incredible. And if you ever have any questions, you can always come and ask me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being our guest on today's episode. Where can our listeners find you and connect with you?
Come over to Instagram. I like to hang out there. So it's Awaken Potential Coaching. And yeah, just send me a DM, just say hi and we'll have the chats.
So make sure you reach out to Johanne, go and say hello to her, connect with her. Her DMs are always open and she loves a voice note like me.
I sure do. Thank you so much, my love. This has been amazing.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on the episode. And thank you to all of our listeners for today's episode. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And I will see you all again next time. Thank you for tuning in to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur Podcast with me, your host, Kayleigh Greenacre. If you are ready to build, grow, and scale your dream six-figure or multi-six-figure business, then head to our website now for more information or connect with me on socials to see how you can create your dream business and dream life.